Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless coming at you today with another video. Now in today's video I have a lot to show you, but I'll try to keep it quick. Today we're going to talk about one of my all-time favorite steels. And the steel I'm going to talk about is 1095 high carbon steel. Now why is 1095 such a good choice for me? Well, personally, I tend to like carbon steels. I think carbon steels are excellent in terms of their overall use as a wilderness blade. And for me, the bulk of what I do is preparing wood for a fire, so a lot of batoning, feather sticks, chopping and splitting, things like that. So a good durable steel, something like 1095, that both has the ability to get super sharp if you really work on that edge, but at the same time is durable enough. Sometimes you may chip an edge, you may have a little bit of damage, something you want that's reasonably serviceable in the field. So for me, 1095 is a great choice. But as I mentioned, I do have a whole bunch to talk to you about here. But before we do me a favor, stay tuned. So as I mentioned, 1095 for me is an excellent steel for general outdoor camp use, using it to prepare for fires, things like that. There is one little downfall in my mind. I don't necessarily like the way 1095 is for food prep. A coated blade, yeah, it could go either way, but for me, an uncoated blade, something with a patina, does sometimes make your food taste just a little bit funny. But beyond that, it doesn't bother me too much, and there is something else about 1095 that I think is definitely worth mentioning. When you look at all the different beautiful blades from manufacturers such as Becker, Tops, ESEE, Schrade, Ontario, it's pretty obvious pretty quick that 1095 steel is an excellent choice. When you go from blades like your Rat 7 to your ESEE 6 to your Becker BK9, BK7, those blades to me are kind of Hall of Fame blades. Blades that have a proven track record of performance. Overall, generally speaking, typically they do not have problems. You don't have too many problems with heat treat. 1095 is a steel that is very understood. So with that said, it has become an excellent choice for me, something that I too very much understand. I understand the properties, I understand how it'll behave, I know what it's going to be like if I want to strip a coating off of a 1095 blade. I know what it's going to be like to add a patina. You know, it needs to be understood when you bring one of these blades into a wet environment that you are going to need to take a little more care for them. You're going to have to use maybe some sort of a coating, whether it's an oil or a grease. You need to be a little more careful with your sheath choice. To me, I have found that, quite honestly, with my 1095 blades, and I know it's kind of gross to say this, but a ballistic nylon sheath actually does typically work pretty well. Now obviously Kydex is a decent choice. It's something that's going to give you overall good retention with your blades, overall good resistance to moisture, and that to me is definitely probably the premium choice. But at the same time, I do obviously appreciate a good leather sheath. The only thing is you do need to be careful with your leather, making sure that if you are going into a damp environment, you're really paying attention and drying everything out when you're done. Now, I do have a ton of blades here to go through very quickly. I'm not going to go into full depth on these. Some of these blades do have full either tabletop or field reviews, so if there's anything here that you'd like to see specifically, either drop me a comment below or take a look through my previous videos to see if I've already covered one of these blades. Now, like I mentioned, I do want to take a look at some of these blades and talk about them real quick, but before we do, hang tight for a real quick announcement. Hey there everybody, Eric from Outer Limitless, bringing to you today the Outer Limitless exclusive collection, bringing my followers and supporters high quality, limited, short run products covering many different genres and functions. If you are a follower or supporter of Outer Limitless, there's no better way to help out than to get yourself a piece of high quality, affordable gear from the exclusive collection. So here you'll see all kinds of blades of different shapes, different sizes, different manufacturers, some of them with coatings, others without, different types of construction. Some of these are handmade knives, others are more of your kind of factory blades. Different steels here. For the most part, like I mentioned, I do have 1095, but in a couple of cases I wrapped in some 1070 and 1080 just for the discussion. Now, of all of my blades, you'll see here, these are all the blades I have in either 1095, 1080 or 1070 steel, which this really does make up a huge part of my collection. And when I say all the blades, really these are just my fixed blades that I'm talking about today, but there is a huge number of blades and some very, very capable knives here that really make up, as I mentioned, the bulk of my collection. And that wasn't really on purpose. It just so happens that these blades that I like, they just came in these steels. I mean, it's what it is. You really can't find too many BK9s in any other steel. It's just what it is. Now, I have seen a few BK7s from Becker and actually S30V, which must be pretty cool. I think that would be a really interesting collector blade to get your hands on. But for the most part, you do see them in 1095. Speaking of the Beckers, here you have the BK29 Moses Bowie, which was a very short run. You can get your hands on these, and they're also similar to the BK20, which is the Bundock Bowie. A couple of beautiful blades. Nice large blade here. Look at the size of this thing. Good hefty chopper. Definitely a capable blade. And again, just another nice offering in 1095. Now, a couple of blades that hit home for me, my SE6, which pretty much built my channel, and a very similar blade to that, the Ontario. This is the Rat 7. Now, the Rat 7 does come in a couple of different steels. You can get it either in 5160, or in this case, it is 1095. There are a couple of different options out there, and it is kind of hard to differentiate between them when you actually go to buy one. So you just need to pay a little bit close attention depending on which one you want. A blade that I very, very much like and haven't used a ton yet, but I really want to. This here is the Pathfinder Knife Shop. This is the Mountain Lion. Beautiful wilderness blade. Nice and heavy duty, thick spine. Scandy grind, sharp, 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 like scary sharp, almost intimidating sharp. And they intentionally leave the scale on the blade to make it look like it's forged, so a very nice piece here by PKS Knife Shop. Now, one manufacturer for me has pretty much the best looking knives out there right out of the box, and that is Tops. They have some of the nicest shapes, nicest sizes overall. The just general idea for the functionality, the coatings, and the way their blades look are just amazing. One of the best fit and finish. But for me, I do struggle with Tops just a bit. I think there's always just something about them. As much as there's the features that I like, I have an equal number of features that I don't like, typically in the handle or the overall geometry. It's always something funny for me with Tops, but I do have to say they're beautiful and have one of the best fit and finishes out there. And of my Tops knives, one of the ones that I actually enjoy the most, this knife is a funny looking blade, but this is the Tops Viper Scout, a very interesting blade. Nice thin stock here. I want to say it is 1/8 of an inch. Fits in your hand beautifully, very comfortable. Again, 1095 steel, good and durable. Has that black finish on it. They just do a very nice job with this particular knife. Now, apart from the factory blades, another great way to go with 1095 would be with a handmade knife. This here is a Thomas Hacker hand forged knife. I have done a full review on this. This is absolutely gorgeous. Basically my nicest blade. This is just absolutely beautiful. Fits in your hand perfect. Quality 1095, forged with a couple of different steels in there. This is Sanmai construction and a very slight recurve there. So overall, a just beautiful knife, and I suggest checking out my full feature review. And in a similar fashion, another beautiful handmade offering. This is the Field Hand from Schneider Customs. Now, this is not 1095, this is 1080 steel, but very close to 1095. Takes a good deep patina. Here you'll see I put a vinegar patina on this to help protect the blade. Like I said, I know that a lot of times my hard use 1095 blades are going to find their way on camping or backpacking trips. They're going to find themselves into a wet or moist environment. So putting a patina on them can often help in reducing the overall rust accumulation. But again, if you want something that's just a little different from a lot of the factory blades, I suggest going with a nice handmade blade from any number of makers, but two gorgeous offerings here, both from Schneider Customs and Thomas Hacker. Now, a brand that's a little bit newer to me, I've spent a little less time with them, but I do definitely like them, is Kizer. So here, the Kizer Bush. I do greatly like this knife. The handle is actually known at this point to be undersized. Most people who have reviewed this have had some exceptions with the handle. For me, I greatly like it. It actually, even though it is small, feels excellent in my hand. I definitely like it. I think it's comfortable. And even though I have a large size hand, I think the actual handle does a good job, fills out my hand appropriately. And even though this blade is a little bit longer, it is generally a small knife. So to have a slightly smaller handle to me is definitely not a problem. But the 1095 is excellent, seems to have a good overall heat treat, has actually a pretty nice coating on it, and is something that for me I've been able to keep razor sharp. And in a similar fashion, taking a look at another offering from Kizer, this is the Little River Bowie. Now at this point, Kizer doesn't have too many in the way of overall fixed blades. They do have a lot of folders, but their fixed blades are kind of, I'd say, in the works. Some of them in the works, some of them already do exist, but they don't have a ton of them. So you won't get too much in the way of different designs. You have probably 4 or 5 offerings at this point. So between the Bush and the Little River Bowie, definitely some good quality serviceable blades, nice and durable. This one here, you'll see I have stripped the coating and added a patina, but generally from what I can tell, good quality, nice heat treat. Now another company that uses 1095 quite a bit is Condor. Here you'll see this is the Moonshiner. Now this blade I do not believe is actually 1095, but it is very similar. It might just be 1070. I'm not 100% sure. I'll check that and annotate it below. But this to me is a knife that I really enjoy it. I wish I used it more and I don't. For some reason I don't tend to naturally gravitate towards this and just grab it and use it. But when I do, I love it. The grind is just wicked sharp. Great for chopping, great for slicing. This is sort of almost in a way becoming kind of a proprietary grind for Condor. Not to say that there aren't other companies out there, but just that nice high bevel, well done, super sharp. These Condor blades are sweet. And just to wrap up my thoughts, another brand that you get a lot of 1095 with would be Schrade. So here you see the Schrade SCHF52M. I did do a full field review of this. Unfortunately, I did lose a tiny little bit of my tip, but the rest of the testing that I did with this knife proved that it was perfectly strong, actually very, very strong. So it seems like it did have just a little bit of a weakness in the tip, but other than that, this blade has performed extremely well. I do have a couple of other Schrades here. Again, these to me, I do not believe are 1095. I think these are 1070, and I have actually a couple of different models. So the SCHF1SM and 2SM. Pretty interesting blades, actually forged out of one full piece of steel. I have ridiculously thumped on this one. So this blade I've literally thrown all around doing a bunch of target practice, using it as a throwing knife. Just very, very durable. And at the end of it, really not too much in the way of chips or rolls. This thing has held up extremely well, even with all that abuse. So I'm not going to go through really any of the rest of these. I've covered a lot of the different companies between Becker, Kabar, ESEE, Tops, Schrade, Ontario, Kizer, Condor, and your custom makers. Between all these blades, a lot of beautiful options, very well made and quality serviceable blades. Definitely capable of taking good hard use out in the field for a number of different reasons. For me, generally camp tasks and some wood prep for my fire. So alright guys, there you have it. A quick blast through a whole bunch of beautiful blades from a number of different makers in 1095 high carbon steel. As I mentioned, 1095 for me is an excellent steel for a number of different capabilities, but generally woods use, camp tasks, prepping for my fire, things that need good hard use when I'm going to be thumping on a blade, the first thing I think is 1095. So alright guys, thanks for stopping by. I hope you like what you saw. I hope you found it a little bit informative. If you like what you saw, please like, share, and subscribe. And as always, thanks for stopping by. Take care now. I'll see you soon.